Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a combination of GPT-3 AI and visual text network analysis to analyze and interpret your dreams, so that in the end you get something like this, which is a graph of the recurrent patterns in my own dreams, which show me what are the main concepts and images I'm dreaming about, how they're connected to one another. I can see the patterns or the combinations which tend to occur more often. I can also reveal some topics that tend to come up in my dreams. And this can be used to better understand yourself, the images that come up in your subconscious. And you can also use this approach to find the gaps, so the topics or the ideas that tend to occur in different contexts, and maybe see and try to think how you could connect them together, maybe in real life or in your dreams. And it also can be really useful for lucid dreaming, because one of the approaches to lucid dreaming is to learn how to recognize recurrent patterns that tend to come up while you're dreaming. So all this can be really useful in multiple ways, and if you're interested, keep watching so you can learn how it works. First of all, if you want to begin, you need to start logging your dreams using InfraNodus. Here on the left-hand side, I have a list of the dreams which I wrote down. Not every dream, of course, I remember, so some of them are missing, but basically once you write down maybe like 20 or 30 dreams, you're ready to go. You can also start with a fewer if you want. And I usually name my dreams by the date when I dreamt, and a very good way to write down your dreams is to do that right after you wake up. Actually, while you're still fresh, just take a pen and a paper, or reach out for your phone. This is not recommended. And then just start writing down what you've seen and what you felt and what you heard, and try to cover all the senses and all the feelings. So that, for example, one of the more recent dreams you can see here, what happens is that I wrote it down and then it's visualized as a graph, and you can see, what I was dreaming about and in which kind of combinations it happened. And it can even be something that might seem boring, as long as you remember it, write it down, because later maybe the same pattern will come up in some different context and you will make an interesting connection. So even if the dreams seem insignificant to you, it's much more interesting to write them down so that you can later explore what they meant. The way InfraNodus works is that when you write a text, or when you import any text, it visualizes the words or the concepts as the nodes, like here, and the co-occurrences as the connection. So for example, if I dreamt in the same context about a ferry departing, like you see here, then it will be visualized as a connection. And here you can see in which context it was used. So it becomes also a very useful way to look for certain ideas and to see where exactly they appeared. And of course, you can also import from another app. So if you prefer to write down your dreams in something like Evernote, or maybe you have a dream journaling app, or you just have them in a notebook, you can also do that. Just import them either all at the same time, or how I did here, day by day, into separate graphs. Because if you have separate graphs, you can analyze a particular dream if it's long enough. But you can also, of course, import all your dreams into the same graph and visualize them this way. So once you added a few dreams, what happens here is that you have them listed in the panel here. And then the next step is that you actually can look at every dream, but you can also see all the dreams at once. So you have these two menu items here: top graph synthesis and top concept synthesis. You want to click on top concept synthesis, and what it does is that it shows you all the concepts in all the graphs or texts, dreams in our case, that you added, and it shows you how those concepts are connected globally. Okay, so it combines all the dreams that you had, and then it visualizes the graph of all of those dreams at the same time, where the words, the images, the concepts that you dreamt about are the words, and if they appeared in the same context, you have a connection. And those concepts that are more influential, not necessarily more frequent, but more influential, I can explain in the end of the video what this technical term means, they'll be bigger on the graph. So for example, in my dreams, I dreamt a lot about people and time and house. So you see they're bigger on the graph here, right? So they're more influential. It means I dream about these things more often. And if the concepts appear in the same context, they will also have the same color. So for example, as you can see here, I was dreaming about house and place and room, and this was all happening more often in the same context. So they have the same color. Sometimes also, if the words really tend to appear very often together, like if you click on the relations tab here in the analytics panel, for example, I see that one of the top relations or the connections is that like a bus stop. Really stupid and simple thing, but somehow it tends to appear more often. And as you can see, these words are also close to each other on the graph. So the positioning of the words on the graph also reflects how often they occur together. In a way, it's like a map of your dreams, where you can see recurrent patterns and combinations that tend to occur. Okay, so how would you go about analyzing this dream? You actually have a workflow here on the right-hand side that guides you through a very detailed way of step-by-step analysis, text diagnostics workflow, which you can use to analyze scientific texts, but in this case we'll be analyzing our dreams. And I'm basically going to guide you through all these steps, but you can, of course, when you do it on your own, just open this guide and then, just follow the steps here, because it's going to be easier to keep track of what's happening. But in general, the first thing that I recommend you to do is just to look at the graph and just see, if there is something interesting that comes up that somehow seems relevant to you. So for example, like I said, I realize already that I'm dreaming often about people, house, start, time. So something begins here, then I'm dreaming about people here, house, and time. You see? Then I see here there's an interesting cluster, and I say cluster because it has the same color. All the nodes have the same color, and they're also positioned next to each other. Actually, let me move this image a little bit lower. Not that one, but this one here. So you can see where I'm clicking. Road, search, reach, driving. So something about driving on the road, reaching for something. So this recurrent theme of traveling. Okay, so then if I want to deselect those nodes, I click here and then I deselect them, and then I can go somewhere else. And for example, I see that some kind of image of a woman appears in my dream. So, I have the woman, care, man, black, and so on. I can click on all those terms and see in which context they appear. It's my dream, so it's a bit private. I'm not gonna show you what I was dreaming because I don't know what it was. But usually you would want to look at it. So for example, if I'm interested in a specific topic, like I think hill and village are pretty innocent, top, okay? I select a few. I see there is one statement, so it was only one time that I dreamt about these three things at the same time, that I was on top of a hill and a village. And then if I click here, I see in which context I was dreaming. Okay, so here it was about the village at the top of the hill, at a lake where I went a lot when I was young, Baikal. So this is very nice because I can dive in directly into the image in my dream where I was seeing those pictures. So it's very interesting also to just like navigate through your dreams and to understand a little bit what tends to happen in them. Then you can also move somewhere else in the graph. You can zoom in. Also, if it seems like there are too many concepts, you can go into the settings menu here. Just to show you, the button is here. And you can adjust the view. So for example, show only the most connected nodes in first. Zoom out. Okay, I understand big room. Okay, these things I know. Maybe beautiful thought is an interesting pattern that tends to happen a lot. So then I can also see in which context it was used if I click here. And then once I'm done with these concepts, I can reveal a little bit more and also use this filter to see things step by step. But because I use InfraNodus a lot, I tend to just have the full graph loaded. but feel free to use this other one if you want. So this is the visualization part, and this is the part where you interpret your dreams visually, manually. You're not yet using artificial intelligence per se, although it's used in the background to build this graph and to create, to reveal some patterns to you. The next step is to go into the interpretation part. So once we analyze, we explored this, we can mark it as complete, and then reveal high-level ideas. So this is an interesting feature because basically what it does, as you can see here, InfraNodus identified 8 main clusters of concepts and images that tend to occur in my dreams. We have one which is about house and place and room, another one on making time, beautiful dreams, father, so I was dreaming about my father, a woman or an image of a woman, then guy driving. So you see you have all these clusters here, and you can interpret them yourself. If you just click here, you see all the words that are contained inside the cluster, so you can make an interpretation yourself if you want, but you can also ask GPT-3 AI to do that for you. So if you click on that button here, you can also use that button here. It's going to send those clusters, and that's very important. It's not sending the actual dreams, it's just sending the words that are identified. So you're also keeping this safe from OpenAI and from any other system, right? So it's only what's inside InfraNodus, it's not sent anywhere for interpretation. And then you can adjust the alignment, and what happens is that GPT-3 AI interprets the clusters which were discovered in your dreams. Okay, so then you can see nicely, you know, what are the main clusters of concepts that tend to appear. And this is kind of like GPT-3 interpreting the combinations of images that you see, which is great because you're basically asking artificial intelligence to do the interpretation for you. Okay, so one is home interior. That's a bit of a simple name, but it just means I was dreaming about the inside of a house, a room, so a place comes up often, but that's obvious because I'm describing my dreams, so this is why it's happening. I'll show you later how you can get rid of the obvious stuff. And then something about writing, it thinks it's about writing, but there's something about office, conversation, train. So some kind of combination of maybe contemplation or something like this. Emotional landscape here, human interaction, analytical thinking, road trip, and landscape exploration and urban exploration. So we see a very nice summary now of the kind of dreams I'm having. I'm dreaming about some place, a contemplative process, my emotions, how I interact with people, how I think about something, and a lot of traveling, a lot of road trips, and then landscape, nature, and cities, right? So this gives me a picture of what I'm dreaming about. Now, if I want to go a little bit deeper and, for example, try to analyze, you know, what I was dreaming when I was thinking about the road trip, I can go here, and then, by the way, if I don't want to see these cluster names, I can always hide them from the graph, and then I can just focus on the concepts again. So you see we're also switching between zooming out and zooming in, or divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So now we converge and we try to see, you know, how all those things can connect in an interesting way. And like I said, you know, I can click on road and then see what nodes it's connected to, workshop, maybe also driving could be interesting. Continue, you know, and then I see in which context I was using those terms. And then I can choose another cluster. So I can also jump to something else like landscape exploration, for instance, and then see what was happening there and why it's called like this. So there we have this notion of the hill and a side of the hill maybe. And then also looking somewhere, maybe from the hill, and so on. So you see, I can also use this graph to kind of zoom in and then find what was the recurrent theme that was coming up in my dream and think what it could mean and why it tends to come up. So the important part here is to just try to also ask yourself why certain things and images tend to come up in your dreams. And what's really interesting here as a feature is that you can actually use GPT-3 to generate content in relation to this. So for example, let's say I was dreaming something about hill, side, and look, and let's say I have several different dreams here where I list what I was dreaming about in this context, right? And then I want to ask GPT-3, okay, can you provide me an interpretation of this image? So the most private way to do that is to go into the AI Insight panel here, and you see all the nodes that you selected are shown here. And then I can also say generate content related to hill, side, and look, and take the current context into account. So then it will take the selected terms, also the whole graph of my dreams. It's not going to send my dreams, it's only going to send the concepts. And then I can ask it to, you know, somehow develop an idea based on that. So I click on that button here. It sends those keywords that I selected, the pattern that tends to come up in my dream, but also in connection with the main graph, to GPT-3, and GPT-3 generates some content in relation to that. So, and you see here, it's like a little short story actually. It could also be like a dream, starting a new journey to an unknown hillside, looking for a big house with many rooms inside and waiting for the time to make things happen while writing long papers, dreaming of something beautiful, left, felt, and thought, talking to interesting people, meeting lost family members in fields, asking people who stayed there before what they were thinking while living in their cars, finally reaching the point after driving on roads and taking back and talking back at bus stops and running up near hill lakes. It's basically like a very interesting, a kind of one-sided summary of some of the dreams, because we only selected the cluster, but it's very interesting. You know, you can also just copy it for inspiration. Maybe you're gonna have a dream like that, which means you will have a dream that will reiterate some pattern that you already had. But what you can also do is to switch off this, take the current context into account, and then it's going to be a little bit more divergent. So it's gonna depart from the graph structure and just focus on these three terms that you selected: hill, side, and look. And then it's gonna generate something in relation to that. So it's also a way to kind of like see what those concepts could mean. And you're playing with GPT AI here by sending it some, you know, input content and then seeing what it's going to come up with. So it's very nice to use it in a playful way and to interact with your subconscious, so to say. Okay, so once you do that, what you can also do is to basically send your actual dreams that contain those terms and make a summary of them. So you can use this button here, AI Summarize, or if you go to the relation panel, it actually shows you what those three terms are connected to: hillside, look. They're connected to people and back, so I was looking at people probably in my dreams. And then you can generate from these terms, or you can also generate from 13 visible statements that contain those terms. So in this case, it's going to send the statements to GPT AI, and then GPT will come up with some kind of summary of those dreams. And this is a great tool. I mean, I don't have anything to hide from GPT-3, although it feels a bit private, but you know, I hope they don't sell this data anywhere. And what will happen here is that it's going to take these dreams that I had, and it's going to send them to GPT-3 and ask it to summarize them. So it's going to be like an interpretation of what you've been dreaming about, so you don't have to read all the dreams, but you can create like a new interpretation of those dreams. So this is also like a very interesting way to kind of to ideate on top of what you're dreaming, actually, you know. And here I see that there is some kind of journey, lakeside village, a bus stop, parallel lakes, take a motorway, swim across the lake to the other side. They go to a hotel, they have like a barber shop, get a haircut. So it's like you see like dreamy things and also everyday things are combined, just like it happens in dreams a lot. Throughout this journey, they experience various landscapes and interactions with people and feel a sense of exploration and adventure. Okay, so that's interesting. It means I'm quite happy about this interpretation, because it means I'm having a good time exploring in my dreams. So I can close this and move on, deselect those terms, and then you can also mark it as done, this step. It actually already is done automatically. Also relevant and top concepts, so this we already did when we were clicking on the main terms. top relations we also did, because I showed you that in the relations panel here you can actually choose the relations that are quite prominent. So for example, beautiful, view, it comes up a lot. I click on those two terms, I see in which context it was used, and here the words are highlighted that are connected to those two terms. Beautiful, view, let's deselect road just by clicking on that word, and then I see all the different ideas that are connected to that. Okay, so this is how you explore the relations. Then the next step is to, so this is marked as done, the main topical clusters we did when we were selecting the topics that tend to come up. And now a very interesting part of analysis. Of course, writing down insights is important. Recommend you to do that. You can just use a notepad or project notes, and then once you've done this and that, what's also very interesting is that you can locate discourse connector points, and these are very interesting terms that tend to kind of serve as entrance points into your dream. So these are not the most visible parts, but rather parts that didn't come up so often, but when they came up, they were very important. There is actually a very technical interpretation of what this measure means here. So you need to go into the analytics panel, gap insights, then these discourse connector points are here, and then when you click on the question mark, it's going to explain what it's about. You can also, by the way, demonstrate what they are if you click on show here. So you can use it from both parts of the menu. And if you click on highlight and network, it's going to select those nodes and show you that road, driving, bus, look, stop, and then any other words? No, I think not at this point. Room and place, they are the discourse entrance points. So it means that when they appear, they will most likely connect you to very important patterns that tend to come up in your dreams. And from what I see now, it's almost like things that recur as narrative connector points in my dream. So they're not important in themselves, like I'm not into roads or rooms, you know, but these places or environments, they tend to come up in my dreams because they connect it to the important topics. So this is like also a very interesting way to understand, you know, what parts of your dreams mean that something is going to happen, maybe, right? So in this case, it's driving on the road, being in a room or in a place, and then stopping and looking, like you see here. You know, they're highlighted with the rectangle. So if you click reset highlight, then it's going to remove that. So this is a really interesting feature to discover less obvious and more interesting entrance points. So we mark it as completed. And then also another thing that I wanted to show you is the structural gaps in your dream. So it's the topics that could be connected but are not. And basically, if you click here, you can highlight them. And what it shows are the different topics or clusters in your dreams that come up but not in the same context. So it can be interesting to think how you can connect them. And here you can actually generate a question using GPT-3 AI that would connect those two clusters together. So you see on the one side here, there's something about human interaction. Here, women, father, and so on, and then emotional landscape. So there is things that I dream about that are about human interaction here, this green one on the right. And then there is also a big cluster of things I dream about, which is about emotional landscape. But as you see, they're on the opposite sides of the graph, and there is a gap between them. And usually what that means is that if you connect them together in an interesting way, you might generate some interesting idea based on your unconscious in this way, right? So you can think, okay, what could be the connection between those two? Maybe it could be interesting to dream about it in the same context, to have these feelings or interpretations, how something is beautiful, thought, or how something feels, or the energy and so on, and then also having this kind of like doing that in the context of interacting with people. So somehow there is a disconnect here, and that could be interesting to analyze why. I think there is some terms, like in this one, for instance, there is something about a girl, so that happens, but I see it happens more in places in nature. And when it's about human interaction, it's not so much connected to feelings, maybe it's more actions and interactions. So that could be like an interesting gap to analyze and to ask yourself, why is there this gap? And then you can use GPT-3 AI to generate a question. So here it's going to propose a bridge between those two clusters without sending your dreams to GPT-3 AI. It's just sending these clusters. So it's not really based on what you wrote, it's more like the topics or the images that you've seen. And here it says what factors influence the way fathers, women, and men feel when they will tell their interesting stories about the body and the field, and how does this differ from when they either left lost, or dreamt of a beautiful girl. Okay, this sounds like a kind of nonsense, but also a very interesting dream-like nonsense, and this is where this tendency of GPT-3 to make things up can be really interesting, because it's also kind of like dreaming. You know, when we dream, we connect things in a random way. So this is also kind of a similar approach. I think here, how I can interpret this question is to think about, you know, the feelings that we have when we meet other people. Could be interesting to think in this way, not only the thoughts or the environment, but to really dive into the feelings. So that could be like an interesting way to activate thinking in this direction. Can also, here is about losing a family member and the ability to feel good and to dream about something and to talk about something in a positive way. So this is also like a very personal and a very interesting proposition. Connection of losing a family member to the feelings that you have, and maybe also analyzing how it can be connected. And then also something about relations of parents and how it affects the perception of the body. So how do you think about your body and how it relates to your relationship with your parents, which is like almost like a very deep psychological question that you would have to go to a psychoanalyst to extract, you know. But here we're just using a combination of network analysis, data science, and GPT-3 AI, and we can ask those questions ourselves just based on the gaps that tend to come up in our dreams and our subconscious. So this is like a very interesting approach to do that. I recommend you to play around with it more, and it's pretty interesting. If you don't want to ask a question, you can also change the AI module here and ask it to generate a challenge. So it can challenge this connection, or it can make an assertion, like generating a fact, for example, or ideating on top of it. So, you know, there's all these different modules. You even can Google this connection, but I don't think you will come up with any interesting results. Let's see. But maybe you will. It's some kind of a book, actually. It's actually really interesting, and it's funny because, like, have you ever tried Googling based on the gaps in your dreams? I haven't yet. It's the first time I do it, but it's great. It's about relationships with parents and family. It's like a book review. Very nice. Maybe I found a new book to read. So this also can be used to find some interesting ideas. So once you explore the gap, you can mark it as complete. Then bridging the structural gap, we just did that with questions. Saving questions, so when you have some insights, try to write them down, because you can work with them later. Challenge, ideate, so it's kind of like using the different modules, we did that. And then reveal underlying ideas to discover nuance. So this is a very interesting part, because basically what happens here, I'm going to reset the highlight, so we see the whole graph again. It's going to take a bit of time because it's a big graph, and also when I'm recording it tends to get a little bit slow. And what we have now is again the full graph, and this is the last thing I wanted to show you. So basically, once you go through all the stuff of your dreams, the next step is to try to get rid of the things that seem obvious. So for example, now I know that I'm dreaming a lot about house, room, people. I can select those nodes. You can also do that here in the topics in the analytics panel. And here it shows you more influential terms, several top influential terms, which are mathematically identified. So it's not random 5 top, but it's actually 5 that stand apart from the rest. Actually, it's 6 that stand apart from the rest in this case. So what you can do is to select all them, And then you click this button here, reveal underlying ideas, which will just hide those nodes from the graph. Or you can also click hide here. So what's going to happen here is that it's going to hide these most relevant images and concepts from this graph to reveal what's hiding around them. And this is a very, very interesting way to dig in deeper into the depths of your texts or your subconscious in this way, right? And then you see what comes up as a result. So here we have something on, like much more prominent ideas about father, woman, body, starting something, making things. I can see here, and as you can see, there are patterns now coming up that were not so visible at the first sight. And we can actually repeat this process because we already noticed all these terms like father and pass, stop, and so on through our analysis. So we can shed off this layer as well. So they will, if we click here, it will automatically remove them and see what's happening underneath, so we can get in deeper. And then, for example, here, very interesting, I can see that I've been dreaming about lake, thought, and beautiful. So when I'm at a lake, I'm thinking beautiful things, which is a great hint to me for my life, because it means maybe I should go to lakes more often, because I have beautiful thoughts at lakes, and I want to repeat this pattern in everyday life more often. So here we have a recommendation directly from the dreams on how to live a better and happier life, which is great, and you can kind of use it as a guiding force to help yourself, explore reality through your dreams. You can even use GPT-3 AI again and generate some interesting content in relation to it, or Google, and maybe you will find an interesting lake. So, lake was so beautiful that it provoked thought. Okay. The lake was so beautiful that it prompted a sense of peacefulness and admiration in the observer's thoughts. Okay. That's quite simple, but it's only because we chose 3 words. Maybe I can challenge this idea of a beautiful lake with GPT-3 AI. Let's see what it comes up with. Takes time, maybe it's hard to challenge it. Okay, the beauty of a lake is subjective. Not everyone will find the same body of water aesthetically pleasing. Additionally, there are many more factors that are just visual appeal and should not be taken into account when judging whether a lake is truly beautiful, such as the ecosystem it supports and its recreational value. Okay, so not every lake is beautiful, and sometimes there are also lakes that are not so nice, and maybe that means that if we're thinking about visiting some lake, we should also choose something that is in a beautiful place, in a balance with ecosystem and so on. So as you can see, you can also challenge your own dream patterns through AI, which is great. Like you can just use it to stimulate a thought and then try to think yourself in the same direction. So it's not using AI to think for you, but just kind of using it as an assistant, as a mental exoskeleton to think with you. So that would be how you do that. And then once you explored this cluster here of words that have the same color and that are close to each other, you can select something else and go to another part which you haven't thought of before. Maybe I'm interested what it was that, like in the dreams about girl, walking. So you see when I click on them, I see which nodes were used in the same context. So here it was a beautiful girl walking, obviously. So okay, there is a part of the dream which has these terms. Okay, then something about being inside. Lost and inside something. Okay, lost, waiting, inside. And as you can see, InfraNodus automatically regenerated the names for these clusters as we generated them again. So I can also see the kind of zoom out and try to interpret them again using GPT-3. It's about work, lost decisions, feeling care, forest walking, city driving, music enjoyment, and nature dreaming. So as you can see, it becomes much more specific that I'm thinking a lot about, or I'm dreaming a lot about nature, forest, feeling, and also feeling like there was a decision and that was lost, and so on. So as you can see, there's like some very specific content that tends to come up. And so this graph can be interpreted in many iterations. You just remove the first layers and then you dig in deeper and you try to understand what comes up there that is important for you. And once you do that, you can also mark this as completed, reiterate the steps, and then just write down some thoughts, and I think that's it, for this workflow. So if you find that interesting, try it out on InfraNodus.com with your own dreams. Just import them into one graph like I did here, or into separate graphs. You can also use InfraNodus to write down your dreams. Just create a separate account for your dreams and just write them down into separate graphs. And as you can see, today we looked into the approach where we use visual text network analysis, data science, and GPT AI to analyze and interpret our dreams, to reveal the main topics inside, like we did here, to see how they're connected, to find out which patterns occurred in our dreams, which connections tend to come up, also what are the gaps in our dreams, so what is missing, what kind of images we could maybe connect a little bit better, like forest walking and city driving. In this case, maybe it would be nice to dream about a forest in a city and so on. And then also this approach of removing the layer of evident ideas to then see what's hiding behind it, so you can reveal the concepts that are not on the surface but that are deeper in the subconscious and that didn't appear so often. So this would be the workflow, and you can reiterate it several times. As you add more dreams, you can run it again. I hope it was interesting for you, and if you have any feedback, comments, or questions, suggestions, please let me know in the comments to this video or through our support portal. And try it out on infranodus.com. I would be very curious to hear your impressions about it. Thank you.